You beat Clemson for the first time in school history. And you do it on the road. You get the Kentucky monkey off your back. You don't just get it off your back. You throw it out of the zoo. Like that's exactly what we needed from that closing kick. But it was also the type of season where you look back at it and you have like, man, you don't always have a Tyler Shough who has the season he has. You don't always have a Ja'Cory Brooks. And did we waste it?
Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to the University of Louisville football program here on the State of Louisville Podcast Network. I'm hosting tonight. I'm producer Keith, and with me, as always, you know him, you love him, the Big J journalist, Matt McGavic. And of course, your MMA fight analyst extraordinaire, number one Soto fan turned hater, Vincent Lococo. And fellas, we got
set myself up for that one.
We got a special guest tonight joining us all the way from 93.9 ESPN Louisville. Making sure I had the station right. I don't want to get that wrong. You know him. You'll love him. The Biggest Biscuit, a.k.a. Dave Scull. Welcome back to the program.
What's going on, fellas? Long time.
Yeah, long time. It's been too long since we've seen you. One on the program or one in the stadium.
Yeah, well, look, right. I get to see Keith. Keith sits in my section every home game, so we usually have a couple minutes to talk about the goings on the field. And but I saw Vince once this year, I think, in the parking lot, and haven't done the pod since last season.
Brown bag for Loco.
Look, I had a stretch of a few games where I went from, like, I usually take the double deuce, Coors Lights down while I'm on my walk and smoking a cigar. And I was like, we'll throw it back to our more ignorant years and do the Four Loko and the brown bag a few times. Because, it's like drinking 4 whole beers in one tall boy. What am I supposed to do with that math?
Exactly.
There's only one thing you can do with it. People, like, you kids don't fully understand the terror that was the original recipe for Loco that got bad.
I definitely don't. I'm way too young.
These new age Four Locos are nothing. Nothing compared to the original that was the horror it was.
That was it was a terrifying thing. My whole generation was built on Red Bull based shots, so we were just throwing our body against the wall like 10 times a night. I don't know how any of us are still alive.
You're still here.
You'll appreciate this reckless story from my college year. So this was, I think, the year before OG Four Loco got pulled. So, of course, being a football team member, we like to do reckless things, and we like our pre-workouts as well. Well, of course, Jacked, or Jack 3D, as it was labeled. We've talked about it previously on the pod, how it got pulled because it basically made you test positive for meth, because it was basically meth. So I wasn't as cavalier as some of my teammates, but I would throw a single scoop in Four Locos if we were really trying to tear something up. So Roman, Starting 502 podcast. This is a podcast to podcast beef. Roman Kelly, yeah, you got to step your Loco game up. What you're doing now? Nothing.
I worry about that kid every time.
That's funny.
Are we going to address the elephant in the room with the vertical video?
Yeah. I was going to go with your buddy in Lexington first, but if we want to go vertical, we can go
wherever you want to go
today, Dave.
Look, I don't know what's going on with my phone. There's a glitch. It's not locked. It's not a setting. It's just a thing that doesn't happen anymore. Like, I can't get the camera to rotate. I feel like my parents, like asking me for help whenever they get locked out of their email or something. Like, I can't do it.
Have you hit the age where it's now technology is just going to start not working?
Yeah, even stuff. That's right. Even stuff that's.
Yeah, that happens once you get to your age. It's normal.
Things just don't work like they used to.
It's 100% true.
Well,
all blue shoe.
Well, now the other elephant in the room, Vince, I'll let you take the lead on this since you were the one who was running with it.
Yeah, we advertised it on Twitter, and Dylan Kuntz. Sounds like you guys are going to have a boxing match to settle this beef of who is going to be the biggest biscuit in the state of Kentucky this year.
I've been on this corner for a long time. All right. And somebody said this is a gimmick war. And I was like, this is a lifestyle for me. It's a gimmick for what's his name again? Dylan Kuntz. Is that right?
Yeah. Dylan Kuntz.
Yeah.
Dylan
okay.
Kuntz.
Yeah. He doesn't even look big. I don't understand it.
He puts a potato in the back pocket.
I will sue him. Okay, I'm not a litigious man, but we will go to court if this man ends up with a potato in his pocket. If he so much as smokes one rib, or a cigar, or any of the things that I'm known for. If I see him on a golf course, I'm calling my lawyer immediately. I don't need this kid in this Commonwealth on my corner. He's young. He doesn't even look fat. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
He's young. He's handsome. I'm sure he swings a baseball bat well. This is
we can call him hoe cake or something. Call him something else. Like, call him corn muffin. He's not big biscuit.
Muffin, I love it. I'm really impressed you took the high road of pronouncing the last name correctly instead of taking that easy joke on the tee right there.
Yeah, it's there.
It's too early for that. I've got vertical video. We're already in the corner on this one. I don't know if I can get away with that.
Of course, the one, the only, the original Biggest Biscuit. Of course, one of the first people we want to have on for the Season in Review 2024 series. And what we want to do this is just sort of go back, revisit the football year that was, and let's just stroll through or hop on the little floaties and go down this lazy river and see where it takes us. So I guess first thing to start, we'll talk about what were your expectations for the team as we came into the year, knowing the schedule that we had against us, knowing the turnover that we had on the roster.
Are you talking to me first?
I'm sorry. No. This is all about you.
We're going round table. It's all about me. Oh my goodness. No, I think like the preseason I put us somewhere around. I can't remember the exact. I have to go back to the shows, but I remember distinctly being like, "Look, I think this could be a 10-win team." I thought if you gave me the over under of 8.5, I was over on that, and I just I expected a lot from the group we had coming back. With especially defensively. I mean, this has been a theme really throughout the entire season with discussions like the reason why most of us that were bullish on this team and thought we were a dark horse ACC championship contender was because of the returning talent on defense, right? With the continuity in this coaching staff and the returning production. It wasn't just a couple of guys. I mean, we're talking about the vast majority of the starters on defense and pretty much every key member, save one or two. But, I mean, when you talk about Ashton Gelati, Quincy Riley, Stanquan Clark, TJ Antonio Watt, every TJ Quinn, everybody. Like it's Ben Perry, like all these guys that were super productive last year and were key to this defense. We expected them to be at least as good as they were last year, right? If not better with another year in the system and the continuity on the staff. And then you're adding in, 4 or 5 what we thought were impact DBs, and strengthening the defensive line with a Thor Griffith and a guy like Renee Conga and Tramel Logan and all these guys that it just felt like we were buttressing what was already a strong core on defense. And that was the main, I thought, I always think we're going to be fine. I know you can take offense for granted, and you don't want to do that. But with the talent we had and the playmakers we had in the fold, I thought we were going to be pretty, as long as Tyler Shough hit, we would be fine on offense. With Jeff Brom, you always think that way. And it turns out we were. We scored 24 and at least in every single game this season. Offense was never the product. When people would start picking apart the team, in the lower parts of the season, they started talking about the offense. Like, yeah, it's not perfect, and I have a lot to say about the offensive line at times this year, but they got better. But It's all about like the losses, the games we lost was not about the offense. You know, it was about the defense. And that was why we had such high expectations this year, and why in the summer sometimes we would take umbrage with somebody picking us middle of the pack or whatever, and maybe undervaluing us. We always pointed to the defensive side of the ball, and it turns out they made us look kind of foolish for a couple of games this season. And really is the head scratching part of this season. Like, not a disappointment by any means. Like, it was a very good season. You beat Clemson for the first time in school history. And you do it on the road. You get the Kentucky monkey off your back. You don't just get off your back. You throw it out of the zoo. You know, like that's exactly what we needed from that closing kick. But it was also the type of season where you look back at it and you have, like, man, you know, you don't always have a Tyler Shough who has the season he has. You know, you don't always have a Ja'Cory Brooks. And did we waste it, you know, with some just head-scratching defensive failures at times this season? You know, and you look at the Clemson game and wonder why we couldn't play defense like that at any point in the first 6 games of the year. But yeah, like, expectations-wise, I know I took a long track on this, but expectations-wise, I expected like a 10-win contending team in this league. There was a range there, but the way we got there was not the way I expected to get there. I'll put it that way.
It was a unique topsy-turvy road that we sort of took through the season. And Matt, Vince, I'd say it's pretty fair to say you were probably riding very similar boat with Dave on that. I feel like I was the one pessimist of the group.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was 10. I thought 10 was a lock for sure for me.
I didn't think 10 was a lock.
Y'all know I'm pretty bullish on this show, though.
That's true. I didn't think 10 was
I was with you. Like 10 was where I was at. You know, that's where I expected us.
I thought 9 was probably more so of the safe bet, but that's just me, and I'm naturally a pessimist when it comes to these type of things. And my hang up was the top end of the schedule, at least compared to 2023, was a lot tougher. Like, we already know how easy the schedule is from 2023 was. That storyline's been done and dusted. And the top end teams that Louisville faced in 24 were going to be a lot more stiff of competition. Like, you had to host Miami, you had to host SMU, you had to go to Clemson, you had to go to Notre Dame. And as long as you could at least sort of split that mix, like, you would feel really good about having a potentially special season. Well, they only won one of those games, unfortunately, and they didn't completely take care of business outside of that as well. They ended up losing one of those, like, can't get right. Rephrases. They end up losing one of those games where you just kind of automatically assume, like, you just pencil it in from months on end. Like, the entire offseason, I'm sure everyone on this podcast and most of Card Nation is like, yeah, that Stanford game, it's a walk in the park. Next.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fair. I think I came in most pessimistic on the show. Like, I was flirting the 7 or 8 win line just because I had questions about us against teams with high end talent. And I also thought certain teams were just better than they actually ended up being. Like, I thought that Kentucky team was going to be a lot better than they were. I thought Pitt was going to be a lot better than they were. And I was feeling really right about them until about week 7 or week 8 when the tide turned there. Oh, man, I was like, oh, I'm brilliant. I know ball.
You're feeling good. Yeah.
Started 7-0, finished 7-6.
That was but so
That's
it was
miserable.
just a weird sort of thing. Plus, just the amount of influx we had at key positions. Like, you had no idea what to expect. And funny enough, we talk about how, the issue was never the offense. That was my biggest hang up going into the year. Like, I was a big Tyler Shough guy. I thought the interior of the O-line was fine, but it was like, okay, what are we going to do at wideout? We don't know what Ja'Cory Brooks or Colin Lacey Kid are going to do. And then we don't know about the depth behind it. We don't know what, or as early as we don't know what Penny Boone, Don Chaney backfield's really going to look like. What are we going to see there? So it was really a interesting year when it came to expectation setting. I feel like most people were in that 9 to 10 win sort of camp. I set the bar kind of low, and we sort of met in the middle. It was a weird year. So if we go through, we start off winning the first 3 games, win the 2 bye games convincingly. Team looks great. And then we come out and we grit a tough game out in sweltering heat against Georgia Tech, and we end up with a nice little backdoor cover off that block kick at the end of the game.
That game was just miserable. I remember seeing Robbie at that game, and the coaches had gray pants and he had kneecap sweat.
That's rough.
So we start with those three coming out of the gate, and then I believe the next game was at Notre Dame. So, what was the sort of thought, early in the season, if there is anything specific? What were the concerns with the team? What was the thoughts going into that road game at South Bend?
So, basically, with me, I at that point, it's funny to look back on it because I wasn't that impressed with Notre Dame at that point in the season. Obviously, they had lost to North Illinois, and I was like, I don't even think this team is as good as last year's Notre Dame team. We'll be fine, Just gotta not turn the ball over, and we'll be all right, And it's funny you mentioned that's kind of what I was getting at when you're talking about the questions on offense. That's why I was so secure with this team going into the season, because if you give me a Jeff Brom team and tell me the questions are on offense, I'm like, all right, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? And that's how I felt about it to that point. But there were cracks in the armor at that point. I was worried about the offensive tackles early in the season. I was worried about the defensive line at that point in the year. Ashton wasn't Ashton had a funny year. Right, where he didn't have a horrible year, and you can credit some of it to he didn't have somebody on the other end pushing the rush back towards him. I get it, but I also watched him on 4 straight possessions get busted off the ball. There was plenty of that this season too. But going into that game, we were worried about the discipline and the communication on defense already. That's the stuff that really bothered me. And we hadn't quite found our identity on offense, but we knew we had something with Tyler Shough. And it was what still blows my mind about this season is just the fact that we couldn't figure out helmet communication on the defensive side of the ball. I don't understand how 136 other programs in Division 1A figured it out, or most of them did. And
if you can't figure it out, scrap it early.
Exactly. Let's scrap it game one.
Yes, right. Scrap it game one and just go straight to signals. It's not that big of a change. You're already using signals half the time anyways.
Right.
But we're watching them and I don't want to get too far ahead of because we're going to talk about this during the SMU conversation here in a minute. But the things they were trying to do on defense, when you have the same system as the year before, you shouldn't have that big of an issue with communication. You're doing the same shit you did last year. Sorry, but I don't understand. You have most of the same personnel. Why is communication all of a sudden a massive issue? But we'll get into that with the SMU game. With Notre Dame, I expected our best performance coming off Georgia Tech, and we got 3/4 of it, and a couple of maddening failures, just the Chuck runs 60 yards and fumbles it.
Yeah,
it just blows my mind. The turnovers killed us. And just the inability to get them off the field on 3rd down, and or even get them in that situation. That Notre Dame game had such weird vibes to me, because I was looking at this going, I don't feel like they're a far superior team to us. And then they end up in the national championship game. Granted, they got better week in and week out throughout the year, but it still kind of blows my mind that team ended up in the national championship game.
Yeah, it was a weird game. So I made the trek up there and met some of my buddies who were Notre Dame fans. And as we're walking back to the vehicles after the game, it was a weird conversation where no one was happy, because it's I thought we had opportunities to take the game, but we made sloppy mistakes and threw it away. They're frustrated because they thought they played very sloppy and it shouldn't have been as close of a game as it was. And realistically, probably both right. I would argue, other than NIU, that was probably one of the worst games Notre Dame played this season, with the kickoff return fumble and a couple of other just random turnovers. So not to sell them short. So we fall short in that game. And then, Dave, you were talking about a little bit. We come back home to SMU, and that was a weird game where we didn't have a particularly large crowd. And I'm guessing it's because SMU didn't have that sexy brand name recognition that it took all of one season to get. And maybe that's just because of the casual fan not paying too much attention or not knowing the lore of SMU and how they basically just can print oil money to make their program good. So we come out, we play a close game with them. We have some calls that don't necessarily go our way. We have some really unique ones. And of course, I forgot to mention on the Notre Dame coming off the double pass interference game.
Oh God! All right, so I had memory hold a lot of this. All right, just to let you know, like I had like as I'm sitting here thinking about the Notre Dame game, I was like, man, I know that we had a couple of ridiculous calls in that game. I'm trying to I don't want to make this pod about officiating, but like there were a couple that I really wanted to point out, and then you just reminded me of the double PI, and I just want to quit this podcast right now and walk away. Like, what a just yellow belly cowardly call. Like I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. I watch a stupid amount of college football. I never saw it called again. I don't think I ever saw it. I think that's the first time I've ever seen it called.
That's the first time I've ever seen it done.
Like I'm sure between all of us, like I've watched thousands of college football games. I think you're all probably at the same type of numbers I'm at. Just college football degenerates, and I have never seen that call.
Yeah,
that
was a wild one. And again, not why we lost the game, but just.
You think that was his like confessional? Like say 10 Hail Marys and make one bad call in Notre Dame's favor.
Make
one head scratchingly terrible call, and you'll be forgiven. You'll go to heaven.
Into midnight mass after the game, like Father, I did it. So we roll back home. I'll say a disappointing crowd because I was expecting more than what actually showed up, and. It's a close game, and again, weird officiating, but push comes to shove. We let one slip away against SMU. If I remember correctly, like the EPA results that came out like the Monday or Tuesday after the game showed that we were out netting them average like for the whole game. It was one of those, how bad did we get beat? And Louisville should have won that game. So vibes are bad at this point. So we come off the loss at Notre Dame, which I'm not going to necessarily say was unexpected, but still disappointing. And then
it got there,
it was one you could take though. Like that, I feel like the vibes in the fan base where that's one you could take because it was a non-con game. You know, there wasn't a lot of panic at that point. You felt like you let it slip away, and maybe the conversation about the playoff changed a little bit because you left one on the floor, but ultimately you have a chance to win a championship still, you know, and everything's still in front of you there. With SMU, the two takeaways I had from that game just still in my brain were just the absolute lack of pass rush and the communication coming to a head in that game, where it was not just the communication, but the fact that we're trying to sub defensive linemen against a tempo offense. You know, like that was that just like I was pulling my hair out going, this is middle school stuff. And this is a staff that's been together, you know, like what's going on? Why are we running guys in and out? And like the one that I can't forget, I forgot which player it was, but the goal line play. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about when we get an offsides or penalty because we're running guys in and out when they didn't sub on the 2-yard line. I'm like, guys, then you can't do that. Like that's not even a helmet communication with the players thing. That's just who on your staff thought you can do that. You can't sub against the tempo offense. And like, if they're not subbing, you're not subbing, you know? And it was, how many times do you have to just have complete confusion before you stop and say, all right, we got to do something different. And I just couldn't understand how we didn't get that figured out before game 4, but please proceed. I couldn't get that was the game that I about lost it.
Yeah. The oversimplification thing that Coach English talked about in one of his press conferences early on in the season, like how we're going to have to move to oversimplifying things, was like you're talking about. It's frustrating how it didn't come earlier in the season. Like, how are these not things that you notice in fall camp? You know, these are every fall camp scrimmage I was a part of. We had headsets on. It was treated as if it was a real functioning football game. So not knowing this stuff beforehand, that, hey, defense, although we have the helmet communicator, it might not work out this year for us. It's just we don't have the guys. It's going to be too much. Let's just run our normal deal. I don't understand how we can't make that adjustment earlier, and we're likely sitting here having a different conversation.
And on top of that, the fact that once they did established mid-season that they were having these issues, why they didn't just go back to what was working literally just last year. It's not like it's a rule that says you have to use it. Am I right? I mean, I think there's something to where, like,
and it's the same guys too. It's the same personnel for the most part. Like the guys you're communicating with and the linebackers that have the helmet, they're the same people that were calling the plays last year.
All I can think about is just maybe they're having too much to think about pre-snap. You know, coaches in their ear, like make sure we're in an over front, cover 4, whatever, and some language that I'm sure they have. And I mean, and then he's like, well, TJ, read A to B here. They're probably 40% pass, whatever percent run. Watch them go in boundary if they motion this guy. And now he's just sitting here thinking, and, you know, before long, he hasn't gotten 2 words out of his mouth, and they're sitting there, everybody's holding their hands up type deal. That's kind of how I was picturing a lot of these guys this year. Personally, me as a young guy like that, I would have panicked with that much information being thrown at me at that one time.
And it makes
how often sorry, Keith, I did just to piggyback on what he said. How often did we see defensive linemen that were on a knee?
Yeah.
When the ball was snapped, you know what I'm saying? Or guys that were standing up, not in a athletic position. You know, like there's you know, edge rushers that stand up. It's fine. Like we all know. We watch football. We played football. But somebody standing up with their hands on their hips or with their hands up like this, like what am I supposed to be doing? And all of a sudden, well, you're not supposed to be doing that. They're snapping the ball.
Yeah, at least get your hand in the dirt or do something, man.
It was the most maddening part of this year.
You're on all fours and you're rolling and stuff.
And
right. We all know.
Yeah, and something that I picked up too, that not only was there having the communication issues between the coaches on the sideline and in the booth to the field, never once did I feel like one of the team's defensive leaders or just anyone on the field in general, like, try and take on-field initiative for trying to fix communication issues, because, like, yeah, it's not going to solve everything, but you would think that at that point one of your defensive leaders would at least try to step in and help someone out based on, like, what they've done in the past. I don't really recall seeing that at all.
At least verbally vocalize. I mean, I've said it on this show regardless. If we're running cover 2, we're all running cover 2. Now, it might not be the right coverage against a 3-wide set, a 3-by-1 set, but at least we're all in cover 2, and we all know where our zones are, and we all know.
You got a base defense that you're all running. Yeah.
Exactly.
So a part of me wonders if, like, the culture of the team, there isn't really any tolerance. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Biscuit. I believe it was like Aaron Rodgers clips when they first rolled out the helmet communication, and you can talk up to 15 seconds on the play clock. And they're doing, like Vince said, like, okay, and we're going to run this. Okay, don't forget to check blah, blah, blah. And I believe it was Rodgers just eventually was like, shut up. Just let me call the play. Like, and just talk back and tell, look, you're giving me too much. Shut up. Just give me the play.
That's what your game plan is, man.
Like, yeah, we know our cues. We know our cues. You know, we know our reads. Like, just give me the defense and just roll. Like, it gave me. It was the only time that I'll ever say this, because I think a lot of Jeff Brom and the staff. This is not. But it's why it was so alarming to me that I was getting Crackthorpe vibes during the just please do not isolate this as a clip. Just that one little aspect of this, that stretch, you know, where the communication was so bad, and it looked like looked like corners were running different coverages from safeties, you know, where I was just like, why is that receiver so wide open? Like,
I think one of those in the Notre Dame game. 100%.
Exactly. And like, that's what it looks like when you don't. And I remember begging in Crackthorpe's first year for them just to run a base defense, because I couldn't watch, you know, Stevie got loose over and, like, because it happened the next week against Syracuse. It was everybody got loose. Every time they could just run. If they ran 2 go routes, either one or both of them were open on every time. And I was like, do we have safeties in this defense? I'm not like, what is going on here? And that's how it felt. Like, I was getting those vibes, not indicting the entire like, trust me, that's not where I'm at. It just was like, that's why it was so alarming, because I never expected it from this. You know what I'm saying? That's why I was so like, how can you, a quality coach and a staff that's been together for 2 years and most of you longer, how are we having issues with this? That's where I was at with it. But yeah, I recovered.
Just give him a couple quick hitters. I mean, TJ Quinn, if he's the guy on the headset, should only be hearing, what he should be hearing, the front formation, what all they're calling and stuff. But after that, hey, TJ, you're A to B right here. Watch out for the back swinging out of the backfield and hang up. Like, quick little reminders for him. That is it. Like, I don't know. I'm with you.
Too much information. Yeah.
To get off the defense just for a moment, because, I mean, some of that never went away. But this was also the time period of the season where, at least I personally, was really starting to get pissed off with our clock management, especially like coming in or out of halves, or like going to a 2-minute warning, come out, run the ball up the middle and not have 2 plays called. So we're burning 30 seconds of clock. Like the end of the Notre Dame game, I was furious with how poorly the clock was managed there. And I think a lot of that sort of got to skate this year because of the issues that we had on the defense. But that's where we were at that point in the season.
It gets better. Everybody listening at home, it gets better. Okay.
Maybe not quite immediately though, because we have.
No, I'm saying down the road, it's going to get more positive. I promise.
Damn trees.
We have like 3 bad results, I would say, in back-to-back games. Like, we come out with 2 wins and 3 bad results. And I mean, that's what the standard great programs hold themselves to. But we barely escape from at this point, I'll go out and say just like a very bad Virginia team. We lose at home to Miami, giving up 52 points to Cam Ward in that offense, which wasn't necessarily shocking, but was disappointing. And
Never once pressured him the entire game. I don't know. Did we get a QB hurry that game? Like, that was when I was just like, I was a pressure. Did we get one pressure? Like, because honestly, it was, the man was reading Moby Dick and doing, like the man was, it was so casual the way, like, nobody can, you don't even have to look at the defensive backfield. You know that nobody can cover for 5 seconds and in Division I football against a halfway decent team, let alone 10, which is what was happening, and we know that there was a controversial call and there was a ridiculous holding on Ashton. It might have been the most blatant thing I've ever seen in my life that didn't get called. But there was so much to criticize with the defense that, like, I didn't get hung up on those calls, even the fumble, not like whatever. Like, it just all the it was really hard to watch. It was hard to watch the defense get 0 pressure on that on Cam Ward.
You made me curious, so I had to go back. Jordan Gerard did end up getting a sack in that game.
Yeah, there you go. There Gerard got one sack. That was, and how'd we ever get one? Like that. That honestly, it was tough to watch that, because especially coming into the season when you're like, all right, we have 2 legitimate All-American candidates on this team, and they work in concert with an elite pass rusher and an elite cover corner. And with a guy like Cam Ward, who has shown that he will put a ball up for sale if you get him in that situation where he's hemmed up, and we couldn't do it. The man just didn't really even have to leave the pocket, but he was able to. If we ever closed the pocket at all, he was 15 yards outside of it with nobody out there. Like, it was just really hard to watch.
Yeah, like you said, Dave, I mean, just giving any sort of average quarterback or average offense that sort of time, that right there is bad enough. It's even worse when it's against who would come to be a Heisman finalist, and I don't know where Miami finished at the year, but I know they entered that game with the number 1 scoring offense and number 1 passing offense in football. You do that.
Spoiler alert, they exited that game with the number 1 offense as well.
Yeah,
and they lost the Pop-Tart ball.
Yeah. What was that, Ben? Sorry.
And they lost the pot.
I said, and they lost the pot. Yeah, they lost the pot.
That's all right. Yeah. Go ACC.
And Cam Ward quit on the team. But keep going, Keith.
Well, I was going to say, like, what was more frustrating, the Miami performance, or especially that first half against Boston College, where we scraped by with that game.
Oh, you were pounding your chest.
So
with that one, Matt. Don't lie.
that game, honestly, afterwards, let me tell you, like, I wasn't as like the first half was dark times. Like I was not in a good place mentally watching that. Like, I can't do this season, you know. But I was.
I can't afford to lose.
I just can't do it. Like SMU is decent, which I was right about them, by the way.
I can sell myself on oil money.
Yeah,
in my head there. I'm like, oh, oil money. Like, come on, Boston College is nothing. What about?
But like preseason, I quoted their schedule and said I see 9 wins. You know, and I had a lot of people going, that's 6-6 at best. What are you talking? I was like, all right, man, we'll talk to you at the end of the year. But the Boston College game, as frustrated as I was in the first half, I was equally as impressed with a team that we were all talking on the radio. Basically, like especially in the era of NIL and transfer heavy, you know, like, and I'm you know me, I'm pro NIL, I'm pro portal, all that stuff. But there is a conversation about once there's nothing to play for and how bought in and invested are these kids? You know what I mean? Like, and you worry about losing the locker room. And my worries about that were extinguished pretty quickly in that second half, where I was like, all right, they're all on board. They're just busting them, and they look like the team I thought they would be this year, and they easily could have packed it in at halftime. You know, like, and it was as impressive a second half for me as it was a depressing first half.
That's an easy place to pack it in at halftime too. You know, Boston, cold, probably not a lot of people there. I mean, easy place to say, you know, it just wasn't our year. Let's go and see what happens.
I remember watching that. It was a ghost town. Yeah.
Do you remember the friends and family weekend a couple of years ago when we went up there, and it was like people were there visiting their kids, like parents' weekend, and they just had like the gates open, you know, and people were like wandering into the game. They had like 800 people there.
That wasn't the Zay Flowers game, was it?
It wasn't. It wasn't because we won that game.
No, I think that was. I think that was whenever I was still there. But I think I remember that. Whenever, that place was. I didn't enjoy playing there. I think it's kind of a tough place to win because it's so boring and like, especially if you play there cold. I mean, it's just.
It's like that in every sport. Just to let you know, like we see it in men's basketball. I can tell you in women's ball, like they go up there, and they play in front of. I think the announced crowd was 350 this year. It's like it's tough when you're used to playing in front of 8,000 or 9,000, you know, as a women's team, and sometimes a lot more than that. To go into that kind of atmosphere and try to win a freaking basketball game it's can be tough.
God, if the announced crowd was that low,
it's right. Like, how many were really there?
You think they said, "Hey, throw 50 more on there. We can't have this. We can't have this."
They're like 287. No. Come on,
make it a nice
treat. Count the players, count the staff, count the trainers, count the concession workers.
Count security. Well, don't worry. We'll get to tough places to play because they're vacant here soon. But let's talk about something good first. We get the Clemson monkey off our backs. Go down to Death Valley and just out of nowhere pull an exceptional performance out of our ass that if you said you saw it coming, I'm going to call you a liar.
I was there and I saw it firsthand, and I didn't believe my own eyes. It was fantastic.
I'm an optimistic person, so I thought we could win, but that's not what happened. You know, we absolutely blistered them. You know, like that's not what I saw coming at all. But you could see us finding our identity. You know, like it took a while, but to just see Isaac Brown just take over the team and subsequently Duke Watson as well. He was always there this year too, but to have that group and have the offensive line and defensive line have that exceptional game and really control the line of scrimmage, that came out of nowhere because I had so many concerns about the D-line, you know, going into that game. But to see that offensive line, even through injuries, start to really coalesce into something pretty good down the stretch. I thought they were a strong unit in the last handful of games. Didn't see it coming, and but hell, did I enjoy it? I'll tell you.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like that was the first game where we just shut out the veterans in the running back room really, and really just started to lean on Isaac Brown. I think we gave him 20 carries that game, if I remember correctly, for the first time, and he just exploded onto the scene.
I think it had started like a game or two before that, but I think that was the first game where they really like supremely leaned on the freshmen and then completely phased out the seniors at that point.
And Isaac Brown put him to
At
sleep.
that point in the seat. Yes, I mean, that image right there is
in
amazing.
5 years, how many high schoolers are going to have that on a poster in their bedroom? Like,
hopefully so many.
My thing is at that point in the season, like it's just one game at a time, you know, and you're trying to make the best bowl game that you can, and you've got Clemson and Kentucky at that point that you're like the games that you really can get up for. They're your big games.
It was still really good at that point, but to your point, like Clemson and Kentucky are the two, like, doesn't matter how the season's going, those are two goals for you to get those wins. Yeah,
exactly. You circle those on the year, and I mean, you talk about being able to pack it in last game. I mean, they really could have packed it in before the game even started and said, F it. You know, we're not going to the playoffs. There's no point in even being in this game. We haven't beat them before. Probably won't get any calls. You know, to be able to see them go out there and do that performance, still, I'm left like speechless. I've rewatched that game like twice.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and for as high as that Clemson game left us, safe to say we all felt just as bad, if not worse, the following week.
Definitely. We like climbed a tree.
The branch broke off.
All the way. Yeah.
Luckily, my head and
that's
neck
happened to
broke
me. Us fat kids understand how that happens. You know, you don't trust a tree in that situation.
So, yeah, and we don't have to stay on it too long, but the Stanford game, from the travel situation where we don't go out until the day before rather than taking a couple days to get acclimated. Then I think it was their athletic director telling our staff, like, "Oh, you're the only team to ever do this."
Like,
I didn't know that happened.
Oh,
yeah, you didn't know that? That was big talking point. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
And then, of course, what comes out the day after the game, we don't have to go into too far on that, just immediately sent crashing back to earth. Like, I mean, at this point, I'm pretty sure there's an angry mob outside the football facility clamoring for Ron English's job. Vibes were bad.
You can't get too high, and you can never get too low. That's what they always say. And I feel like I definitely know I was too high after that Clemson game and got kicked straight in the balls.
Got too low. We experienced them both in a 2-week period there. Like that, man, just the closing sequence of that game. Like, I can't even really get into the whole game because it felt like we were in a situation when we were up 10. It was like, all right, you know, we just
survive.
Don't F this up, you know, and at that point, that closing sequence is still absolutely mind-boggling. Those two penalties back to back, it was just like I don't know how that happens. And there was a lot of discourse around like the lack of discipline at that point. I was like, look, if you look at his Purdue teams, there's no consistent like penalty ranking. You know what I mean? Like they were around 100th. Or in the 90s twice in his 6th year, like 2 or 3 bad years, and then 2 or 3 where they were in the top 15 or 20, you know, in lowest penalties in the country, least penalized teams, and then like the other 2 years they were in the middle, you know. So there's no real consistency there, and I thought that was kind of an empty narrative, but it's hard to fight it in the moment, you know. When you had that, and you had the Chris Bell situation in Virginia, where you're like, how is this happening again? Like at that point, a lot of us were just like, you have to sit him. You know, I realized how great a player he ended up being. He had a really good kick to the end of the year, but like, man, during the Virginia game, I was sitting there going, you can't keep doing this in these key spots. Like, you just can't. It's killing us. And to his credit, you know, and we'll talk about the Kentucky game, he buttoned it up. And he also
they had to have that conversation of, we have to be able to rely on you, Chris. We can't have you in the game and be unreliable. That's all this comes down to. Every single
and it
time.
wasn't him at the end of the Stanford game, but it just triggered that that memory, from early in the year.
Yeah, for sure.
And for all you talked about how easy it is in this day and age to where you can just pack it up like, hey, we're going to get paid whether we put up 50 or whether we put up 5. Sure. Like, I think one of the things I'm most proud of about the team last year was how they responded after that upset. They come out and they bust heads for the next 3 weeks, including a firmly applied belt to ass against the team to the east of us. Another game that I was lucky enough to be at, watching the crowd leave.
I was there.
7 minutes left in the
guys
third.
Are better than me.
It was great.
It was beautiful.
Last time I made that
trip,
I got busted.
Yeah, I've had some bad trips to Lexington. The last one, I don't know if I went after Stevie got loose, but Stevie got loose was one of the worst. I was there with my father at the time, who at the time was in his 60s. He's a lot older now, obviously, but I had sorority girls in our face on the way back to the car, frat bro trying to fight us and stuff. And I was like, guys, just taking my dad. We're just walking back to the car. I'm not doing anything. You guys need to maybe take her down 10 or 15%, But it just a really nice experience of just watching the Kentucky fans leave and being the ones that are the final nail in the coffin, provide the final nail in the coffin to the Mark Stoops experience, because they're all out on him now. And that game was the final. I feel like the final hammer blow. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful.
Good luck paying that.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah. Good luck.
So
not our problem.
We did our time.
Even as long as you want. I don't know.
I mean, I do have to say there's nothing better than beating them at their spot. Whenever we did that in 2017, I mean, it was very, very
I remember Lamar doing that in 2015 because that was the first time I'd ever been to Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it was fantastic.
I have some cherished memories from back in the day. Yeah. The Elvis game when he had a million sacks, 6 sacks. It was, some really great memories.
My favorite part of that one from 2017 was Gary McRae turning to the UK, I assume season ticket holders. They were sitting pretty damn close. Say, do you guys want a refund? You all want a refund on your tickets? Send me your Venmo, send me your Cash App. I'll reimburse you. Just talking straight shit. I mean, that game, there's nothing better than that game. And I hope that rivalry continues and we can continue playing.
Gary McRae, the scariest picture ever taken of him. That one. The wish MF for Wood picture that he has is just legendary.
Yep.
Then the good vibes keep going. We lose a lot of the roster to the portal, but we keep the good vibes going. We go out to El Paso, beautiful city, by the way. I was bragging on it for weeks before we played the Sun Bowl. As soon as it was we could go there. It's El Paso's sick. I went there when wife was pre-mobing and did a couple of days out there. It's just a fun.
I will pound my chest for pinstripe every time we are out of playoff contention. I will pound my chest for pinstripe bullets when we get it, and that's the bowl trip I'm going to, boys.
Go watch a game at Yankee Stadium.
I have to, not just a game,
a football game. Yeah,
there's just something. Oh, that is awesome.
So we actually go out and we expect to see a lot of the youth. And we expect the team to sort of treat it like a spring ball practice, but they don't. They go out there, they play to win. They don't overload Isaac and why am I blanking on Duke? There we go. There we go. They don't overload Isaac and Duke. Lacey comes back. We confirm he's back on the squad. He gets reps at running back just to spare the bodies. And we go out there and we get a win in what ended up being a thriller of a game and one of the best of bowl season.
There might have been some slight Stanford flashbacks for a few minutes, but it was a victory.
Shout out to Harrison Bailey. Nice to see the young man get a moment in the U of L jersey before moving on.
And he still has a chance to take down Kentucky.
That's true. God. Yeah. If Lagway goes down and Bailey gets to beat Kentucky, I would levitate.
Man.
So it was a real thriller of a year. A lot of highs, a lot of lows, and they come out, I believe it was 9-5 for the season, if I'm correct.
9-4.
9-4 on the year. So what were some of the most pleasant surprises, and what were some of the biggest bummer letdowns for you on the year?
So letdowns was generally just the inconsistency on defense. Honestly, we had our issues on offense. We talked about it, but I thought we'd be able to set our watches to that defense. And the amount of players that we expected production out of that just were complete non-factors this season. Like MJ Griffin, Ben Perry, like guys that we expected to at least be plus starters, and quite frankly, I mean, how many times did Ben Perry's name get called all season? Honestly, and the very few, and the linebacking core was kind of out of sorts, I thought, for most of the year or the first half of the season at least.
Well, covering a wheel route was the problem the entire year for that.
Covering the wheel route and finding a mobile quarterback, which those were the two things where, like, how many times you got to get burned?
The wheel route for me was killing me because, I mean, I don't know what the percentage would be for a linebacker having back out of the backfield, but I assume it's pretty freaking high.
Pretty high.
That the inside linebacker is going to have back out of the backfield, and you should be able to know and see that, he hasn't turned around and looked for the ball when he's at the numbers. He's probably going to turn it upfield because he hasn't turned and looked for the ball. It's just simple football IQ stuff that we did not expect these 5th, 6th-year seniors to be.
And we talked when we had our conversation. We talked about how TJ Quinn was getting washed down, like he's blocking himself half the time. It was weird to watch. The only guy, like the one guy that started making plays earlier in the season, everybody else I thought was Antonio Watt. He had moments, and he had big moments throughout the season. I thought he was the most consistent player. If you're talking about the linebacker plus the star position, wherever you want to put him, whether you want to consider him a safety or a linebacker, like that was the one guy I thought was pretty consistent throughout most of the year. And he had a really good game against Clemson. That was really nice to see. But just expecting so much, I don't want to rag because Gelati's a great kid and I think he's got a future, but it was really vexing to watch him this year, at times where I was like, look, this isn't all just he doesn't have enough help. I'm seeing him there was 3 straight plays, like I said earlier, 3 or 4 straight plays that I watched him against Miami just get absolutely manhandled. And I was like, dude, what is going on with you? It was odd, but I don't want to pick on one guy because it was really a lot of guys that I expected big production out of. Like we weren't out of bounds to expect this defense to be really good, with the returning contributors we had and high level players we had, and to have just the product we had for the first half of the year, and then it reared its ugly head a few times, like Stanford, and a couple times in late in the year, was just really, really hard to wrap your mind around. Now, the things that were positive, obviously, the having 2 running backs, true freshman running backs, average over 7 yards a carry, 8 yards a carry for the season, and be just absolute studs right out of the gate was phenomenal. How often do you get one that's ready to contribute like that as a 18-year-old? You get 2. And Duke is Isaac's unbelievable. Duke is such an angry runner. I love watching him play. He's like the best version of Kejuan Brown, because he's a really violent runner too. Like I love undersized running backs that run like they're bigger than you, and that's what you see. Like there's no wasted reps. You know what I mean? Like they're going to churn.
They're not like Hawk either. Javian Hawkins was like a small, skinny running back. Like these dudes will straight run through your legs at the same time.
Yeah, I always talk about my old high school running back Chris Moran, who was probably 5'8", 150 pounds. But if you were in his way, like he's hitting the hole, he's not taking a cut. Like he's just the hole's there or it's not. And if you're still in the hole, he's going to hit you back. And like you better complete your block, and seeing that. And then I was really pleased, being an offensive line guy, with how they responded and adjusted to the injuries and actually played better in the back half of the year. Like I've had limited expectations with Trevante Sylvester, and I'll give him a shout out that he played much better in the second half of the year, because I always kidding around. I'm like, he's got the skinniest ass of any, Power 5 or 4 offensive tackle in the country. He's 6'6", 280. Like, he looks skinnier than Jamari Johnson out there. Like, what are we doing? But
he tweets you, he's like, why is this whole guy looking ass?
But he played well down the stretch. I'm happy to have him back next year. But it was nice to see that unit come together, and we're getting most of them back. Like, it'd be cool if Monroe Mills was coming back too, and I'd be over the moon, because he played. Like, I thought he struggled a little bit with run blocking early in the year, but the numbers bear out. By the end of the season, he was really good in all facets. And but that interior line's nice. Obviously, we're going to get most of it back with Austin Collins coming back, Renato Brown with another year of eligibility, and Pete Nigra, who I thought they grew together well. And we all know how important that team within a team aspect is with the offensive line, and getting as many reps together as possible is just it's invaluable.
And
I got to ask you, how did it go?
While we're on that, like a potential a debate point, talking point, whichever you want to go with it. True or false? Louisville heads, as it's currently constructed, Louisville heads into the 2025 season with the best line in the ACC.
I'd say we're in contention. I have to look at who's coming back with the other teams. It's so hard to keep track of 17 boosters anymore. Like I'd have to look and see who's got what coming back. But I like where we're at. We'll see how Musa fits in, and who ends up playing left tackle, who ends up playing right tackle. I think we have a pretty good feeling for the interior, but that's a good question.
The big talking point at the beginning, or the whole offseason, was if Tyler's healthy, if Shough can stay healthy, we'll be this. We'll win this amount of games. Well, Shough was healthy the whole year, and what did that for me at the end of the year? Clock hit 0 UK. I'm like, relief almost. Yeah. Like, we made it through the whole year. This kid had a great year. I'm curious, like, your thoughts on Tyler throughout the season, what it felt, having a real quarterback in the Jeff Brom offense, and what we can really see that thing can be.
He's probably the biggest talking point as far as like either surprises or like, I always tend to trust Jeff Brom when it comes to that position more than anything else. Like, he's done it with everybody. He's done it with walk-ons, highly regarded 4 stars, whoever. He gets them in there, gets them productive, and usually gets them to the league. And that's saying a lot. And he obviously saw something with Tyler in the face of some pretty heavy criticism last offseason. We're like, this is what we've got. Like, you're not going to go out and get insert quarterback here. What's that?
He was early.
He was early. It was like the second. It was like he was the first transfer we took last year. He got that when he wanted. And quite frankly, I think we should look back and say, like, we have a robust NIL situation, but we're not Ohio State. Like, we have to be smart with our money. And the fact that he found a discount quarterback and turned him into one of the better passers in the ACC says a lot for him, identifying and developing that. But I shout out to Tyler. He was a warrior out there, and he had all the throws. Like, the guy's got great arm talent. He can run. Obviously, we didn't encourage him to run much this year because we didn't want a repeat of the rest of his career, but he needs to cover both points on that ball. But
Cardinal Claw was not there at Notre Dame, bro. Oh my god!
But yeah, he was phenomenal this year.
He did throw one of the better passes on the year, or probably that I've seen in a long time.
I mean, I can't remember like what episode I said this, but I think he's not a better overall quarterback than Lamar, but I think Shough's probably the best thrower of the football since Teddy. Like, not to knock on Lamar, but because college Lamar is still pretty good. But I mean, some of those throws, like you said, Vince, were insane.
They were nuts. Yeah, like Lamar had the arm talent for sure, and he made a lot of great passes. He was underrated as a passer by the non-Louisville media, but Bill Polian, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, as far as mature passer in college, I mean, Tyler Shough was the best we've had since Teddy Bridgewater, probably.
And even Harrison Bailey, you threw him his flowers earlier. He threw a pass in that bowl game, over the shoulder to
Meeks.
To Meeks, yeah, the corner route. I mean, that's like top 5 ball on the year. Like just randomly pulling that out of nowhere. Like that is that teach tape almost, with your steps to your drop to how you run the route to how you catch the ball to how you finish it. I mean, it was perfection. So and that was cool to see that. You know, I personally always have questions on how much the backup quarterback's being developed, because you never know how much, if they're going scout team, not scout team, how many reps with the ones are they really getting? Are they getting, you know, quality plays and stuff? So to be able to see, you know, firsthand that, hey, our quarterbacks are developing and are, you know, going to be doing well was reassuring.
Yeah, Tyler really did a lot of work early in the season bailing out the O-line, you know, and Notre Dame, like those games like that where he's really good at feeling pressure, and he did the things. He has a really good internal clock, you know, with the pass rush, and feels it really well, and he doesn't make bad decisions at the end. Like that was the thing that killed. I don't want to rag on Plummer, but for a 12th year quarterback, you know, I don't understand how like much he panicked at the end. You know what I mean? Where how many times he just chuck the ball, you know, when he was getting taken down and put it up for sale, or just not feel the rush when it's like, dude, you've been back there for 6 seconds. There's somebody coming. Like there's a freight train coming. How do you not know this? You know, but Tyler was really, really good. I only say that to give Tyler more credit, how good he was at mitigating the rush.
Now is he good enough that if Aaron Rodgers retires this year and you have Jordan Travis on roster and him to have 2 injury-prone quarterbacks battling it out for the Jets starting?
Hey, bring him in, man. Bring him in.
I mean,
bring him in. I don't need any more of the Aaron Rodgers experience at this point. I don't need a malcontent on the sideline.
I might take him over Anthony Richardson at this point.
You all made an awful decision on Richardson from the get-go. I've told
y'all
you
are
that
jumping off on AR-15 way too early.
Dude, I know. I was never high on AR.
What?
Like, at all.
Keith, you see what is being done at Florida with a competent quarterback.
Hey, I like tools. He's got the tools. Just get him in. I'd take him over Tua. I'd take him over Tua as a Dolphins fan.
Man, really?
You are.
I'm
smoking something.
Yeah,
I would take Tyrod Taylor in New York over Anthony Richardson next year. I'm just going to let you know
that. Oh no, your backup's going to get a punctured lung.
Yeah, right.
I would tell people I wouldn't have minded if Aaron Rodgers I could get 17 games of Tyrod Taylor this year. I'd love to see what that looked like.
So, before we let you get out of here, now that we've had a chance to sort of take a step back, look at the 2024 season, what are your expectations for the Louisville program moving forward into the future? And this is something I sort of want to ask everyone, because for the longest time, I feel like it wasn't quite Kentucky levels of football's fine, just don't embarrass us and get us to basketball season. I feel like we've always had a little bit higher of a standard than that at Louisville.
Oh, yeah.
And over the past 15, 20 years or so, it's been growing and growing and growing. So what are your expectations for the team moving forward into 2025 and beyond?
So I feel really good about next year. I mean, I think the schedule sets up pretty nice for us. We have 8 home games, you know, and I want to see Miller Moss in this offense. Like with Jeff Brom, I feel like that's just a toy for him, and I can't wait to see what he can do, because I think he's a dynamic passer that was in a weird situation that he caught a little bit more of the flack in LA than he probably should have. With a coach that was looking for answers, you know, at that point. Like, he wasn't phenomenal this year, but he wasn't terrible.
Yeah, he was the scapegoat. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
See, that's where that's all right, guys. That's where I'm kind of nervous about Miller. Okay,
how's that?
You might want to shoot me, guys. I mean, Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, 3 Heisman Trophy winners, and it's like, what was your problem? Why could you not get it in that offense? Do you not have the talent?
They weren't playing Big Ten defenses every week.
Not understanding it. That is true. Not Big Ten defenses. So
Here goes Vince
I don't
and his
know.
West Coast
I'm like
football
you.
rant.
I'm like you, Biscuit. Yeah, I hate West Coast football. But Biscuit, I'm with you where I'm with Jeff Brom in the quarterback situation, and I trust his development and I trust him fully. I mean, so I'm anxious to see kind of how he does. In my opinion, I'm more nervous about him than I was Tyler.
That's fair. Like with this, I don't think he would peel off this type of NIL money unless he was super confident about him. You know, like he was clearly his target, who he wanted, and I default to him at that position more than anywhere else for obvious reasons. But like, there's reasons to have reservations. Obviously, like didn't go perfectly in USC last year. You know, there were struggles for sure. But as far as like year to year, like there's an opening here. Like the ACC was sneaky good this year. You know, I think that the top 5-6 teams in this league were very solid. You know, and I think some of them are making the investment in football. I mean, we'll see what happens with. I'd still scratch my head with Virginia Tech. You know, with the stories that came out the last couple of years, with the lack of funding and just formerly. What's that?
Florida State as well, going after a lot. Like, just seems like they're making poor player choices.
Yeah, like it's a situation we talk about. It's more obvious with basketball because there's 5 players on the court, you know, so you can talk about the guys that are just accumulating talent and they're not like Calipari and they're not, you know, they're not recruiting to a system like a Pat Kelsey and maximizing their NIL. They're just kind of collecting toys and nice pieces, and we're not sure how they fit together.
Yeah, that's Thomas Castellanos.
That's right. There you go.
It looks super nice, but probably won't work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, with football, it could be less apparent just because there's so many positions, and people tend not to think about how they work together, but. You play a certain type of defense. You play a certain type of coverage. Do you lean towards zone? Are you more of a press coverage team? Like that's why when people start talking about the corners, we've recruited like, well, you need to start looking at what kind of players they are and where they fit into the defense, as opposed to being really concerned about where they came from. You know, on offense, you got to find the players that fit your system. Not just the best players you can find or the most expensive pieces. And Florida State's learning that. I mean, who thought that going from Jordan Travis to DJU? Like, if you're asking DJU to do anything similar to what Jordan Travis did, you're barking up the wrong tree. You know, like he's not a dynamic playmaker.
Oh my God, who said that? Who said that?
Like, you're spending $2 million on this kid to do what? If you have an offense that you're using him like a bruising runner, you know, with a lot of quarterback runs, and you don't ask much of him as a passer. He's a fine quarterback, sure, maybe. I don't know if he is anymore, but if you're asking him to be a dynamic playmaker, but like that's besides the point. Like I think that we can be solidly a top 4 type team in this league going forward, where you don't win 10 games every year. That's not what the standard has to be, you know, but you're a championship contender more often than you're not. You know, like you're a 9-win type team more often than you're not. You're in the conversation most years. But if you have the occasional 8-win, maybe God forbid 7-win season every once in a while, it's not going to be the end of the world. There's going to be years where you have more hits in the portal than you don't. You know, you're gambling at some of these positions. Like we saw what looked like a really and it was a highly regarded acquisition with Thor Griffith, who took a long time to make an impact on this defense, which he did. He had some good games down the stretch, but he looked out of place for a while. And Mendoza, you know, never quite got it early in the year. He played fine. At the end of the season, he played better than I thought he would when he came back, but it was hard to watch early in the year, you know, and there's going to be, especially when you have to project so well when you're recruiting guys from Group of 5 or FCS, you know, to come into your program. There's going to be hits, there's going to be misses, you know, and there'll be years where we're not quite as good as we want to be, and there'll be years where we're one of the best teams in the league. But we need to be in that conversation more often than not. And I think we're positioned to do that. Overall, Brom's done really well in the portal. He's had some misses, but he's had some major hits too. And as long as he has that reputation of, and we saw how the team stuck together with 2 pretty big opportunities to jump off the wagon this year. So if he can keep that mentality and keep guys bought in this portal era, as long as this is the status quo, then we'll be one of those top teams in the league year in and year out. And Clemson, I guess, is starting to actually tap into the portal a little bit. They're probably here to stay. Dabo has gone against his orthodox beliefs and starting to buy in.
Did God run out of NIL money?
SMU's going to stick around. FSU won't be down.
God's spending all his money.
What's that?
I think
God's sending all his NIL money.
That's right. But you got to expect FSU won't be down for long. Like whether it's firing Mike Norvell into the sun eventually, or him getting it figured out. He didn't forget how to coach football. But
I think the only hang up with potentially being like a contender in the ACC next year, not just like on like Louisville's side of things. I mean, Louisville's got an ACC schedule where like they play plenty of quote unquote bottom feeders too, but they also have to play Clemson, play Miami, go to SMU, which those are probably the top 3 teams in the ACC not named Louisville. And plus, I mean, Virginia Tech.
And to go to Virginia Tech,
say what you want about how mid Virginia Tech was this year. If that's a night game at Lane Stadium, good luck.
We've got plenty of time to prognosticate on the 2025 season. I do want to say one thing about just like the standard of mentioning like the fan base being disappointed with a 7 or an 8 win season. As a football first guy, I'm thrilled that we're getting to there as a fan base where it's like, no, winning seasons aren't good enough. Like, come on, you can do better than that. Like where 7 and 5 is a disappointment. And that's something I'm personally thrilled to see. Now, I think we got some pets getting restless in the background there, Biscuit, if I'm right. So
yeah, baby girl is she's I was gone at work all day and now call for an hour, so she's starting to get jealous. But yeah, that's our football fan base has been. We've experienced some pretty high highs over the last 20 years, and I'm really happy that we have a different standard than other schools that are similar to us. Whether it be a Cincinnati or a Memphis or whoever we came up with. And Memphis isn't up here anymore, but even the school down the road. We need to think about football differently. And we've got the right guy for it who understands this place, and I think that he's in a good spot with the reputation in the portal, regardless of what your punter who couldn't get a ball inside the 20-yard line tells you, which is an astounding statistic, by the way. Like wasn't even when somebody said he didn't get a ball down inside the 20 all season. I looked it up and I was like, "Are you really?" I feel like you have to try hard, but.
Yeah, I thought he was Mason King.
That's right. Not to, hammer him too hard, but that whole thing, like I get real skeptical because I know people over at 502 Circle, and I know that no promises are made by them that aren't fulfilled. You got to be kind of careful with any outside voices that might tell you something or promise you something if they're not officially with the collective. But yeah, I feel good about our future in 2025 and beyond. But Matt, you're not wrong. Like our road games are serious next year.
Now, before we let you get out of here, we got a lightning round for you. So don't want you to pontificate too much on the answers. We're just going to hit you with the question.
Got you. I've done enough pontificating already.
All right. So we'll start off. Butter or jam?
Butter.
Good man.
Rogers.
Buttra. No Rogers.
Dream away game.
Ooh. That's just anywhere? Anywhere. I would love to play at LSU.
Louisville can play any of them.
I would love to play at LSU.
Go for it.
Okay.
Night game in Death Valley.
All-time favorite U-Boat player. Any sport.
Man, I am a massive Teddy Bridgewater guy. And it's Teddy or it's Angel McCaughtry. Those are really my two. And in basketball, it's Gorgie. Probably more head and shoulders above everybody else.
The answer
Literally.
should have been Vince Lococo, but
Yeah, that's right.
Favorite U-Bell sporting event of all time?
Ooh, I would say Sugar Bowl.
Okay.
Sugar Bowl. Yeah, that was incredible.
Like the video or subscribe to the channel?
I like the video. Both when it comes to state of Louisville, right?
Hey, my man. All right. Important one now. Pork or beef ribs?
I thought you would ask like spare or baby back. Beef ribs when done properly are orgasmic. So I'd have to say beef ribs.
I guess you already answered this, but Lamar,
so it's like choosing between my two favorites of my two sons. I can't really do it. Like I love them both dearly, but Teddy is just Teddy's the first, and it just he had so many moments of just pure guts, that it's hard not to. He has a special place.
That's Cincinnati.
Oh, my God. 2013.
Oh, I know.
Dude, Cincinnati, Rutgers, when he won that game on one foot and one hand, and he was running for first downs on a sprain. Like, it just, come on, man. The guy's just an absolute warrior. Not to say Lamar isn't. It's just there's something to be said for the first guy.
You got to get touched to get
That's
all those
right.
injuries.
It was like tackling smoke with him. You couldn't do it.
All right, Dave. Well, thank you so much for hopping on with us. Got anything you want the people to know about? Got anything going on?
No, I'm on the drive on 93.9 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 3 to 6 with my buddy Mark Ennis. And I do the women's basketball postgame shows with Chrissy Banta. We'll be doing another one. I think Notre Dame is our next one, so say a prayer for us because they are scary this year.
How are we feeling about the women's team this year? I haven't paid attention to very much.
It's a work in progress, but there's a lot of talent on this team, and if we can keep this core together, they're going to be incredible in a year or two. Yeah. Other than that, sorry, I'm sure I went about 40 minutes over what you were expecting to do. When you start talking about football with this crew, man, we can't stop.
No time limits, no restraints here. Just more content for the folks to consume. I will never give anyone grief for giving us more content. So thank you again for hopping on. Be sure to go find us at Biggest Biscuit on Blue Sky, on Twitter, all the socials. And thanks again for hopping on. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast, the first of many episodes that are going to be in our Season in Review 2024 series. That's Vincent Lococo. That's Matt McGavic. I'm producer Keith. Like, subscribe, hop in, follow the audio feeds, do all that good stuff. And as always, go Cards.